This is lesson 610, which answer makes sense. We're on page 222, and if all goes well, sorry, that's my lamp. If all goes well, this should be a quick hitter. You may be looking at these problems right away and saying, oh man, I don't even know how to do 5/10 times 410. This is crazy. I've got good news. This really comes down to reason. This is a lesson about reason, not necessarily about calculation. And in fact, they don't want you to use a calculator, by the way. So here's what they want you to do. It says for each set of problems, circle the number sentence with the correct product. Do not calculate the answer. Explain how you knew which product was correct without finding the exact answer. So they don't even want you to find the right answer necessarily. They just want you to see if you can tell which one is correct just by using some logic and reason. So let's think about number one for a minute. They give us three options. 5/10 times 410 equals 810, or does it equal 205, or 2050? So the giveaway here is that we're dealing with 5/10. I know this is the way it looks in decimal form. This is the way it looks in fraction form. And can this be reduced to anything? It can. 5/10. 5 is 1/2 of 10. So really what we're doing here is we're multiplying 410 by 1/2. And do you guys know what happens to your answer when you multiply anything by a half? Let me clarify that. If you multiply 410 by half, if we take a half of 410, is our answer going to be greater than 410, less than 410, or equal to 410? We don't actually have an equal. So really the question is, if you take half of 410, will it be bigger than 410 or less than 410? And if you think about it, if you need to think twice, what you can do is round 410 to something easy, like 400, and then find what's half of 400. Split 400 right in half. And we can say half of 400. Remember, of is interchangeable with multiply in this case. Half of 400 is 200. Okay, so if you find half of something, or if you're finding half of something, that should tell you right away your answer is going to be less than what you started with. So in this case, for number one, there's really only one option. There's no way you can take half of 410 and somehow you end up, it's like if there's 410 pieces of pizza, I don't know what scenario we're possibly talking about here. Like, I don't know, feeding a basketball arena that holds 410 people. If there's 410 pieces of pizza, that's the important thing, and you took half of those pieces, someone snuck in and said, I'll take half of these, is that going to possibly mean you end up with 2,050 pieces of pizza in your possession? That wouldn't make sense. There wasn't even that many to begin with. So really, the only choice here, if you take half of 410, it's going to be this guy. Your job is going to be explaining in your own words how you knew that was the right answer without even finding the exact answer. And you can relate to something that you and I just talked about. If you take half of something, there's no way you end up with more than what you started with. Number two, I'm not even really going to. That one's up to you guys. Which answer do you think is correct when you multiply 410 by 1? The third one is actually kind of the opposite take of number one. Number one, you're multiplying 410 by half, something less than 1. But for number three, you're taking 410 and multiplying by something greater than 1. And in fact, it's going to be greater than 2. So use that to try to, number one, I would say eliminate what you know is incorrect. And number two, see if you can figure out which of these answers would make the most sense. Now, since I have some spare time, if this all worked out great for you guys, I'll jump over to the math boxes really quickly, and I'll throw some quick hitters at you. This is kind of a little bit of a bonus. I was looking, and I thought number one might throw some people off, especially if your parents or guardians or people who are helping you have not found the area of a rectangle using fractions in a while. Okay, so what I would do for number one first is multiply the whole numbers, because, well, I guess I'll start there. Area equals length times width. We have the length and the width. Cool. And notice this looks like a square, doesn't it? But it's not a square because a square has same side length for every side. We don't have that. It's a little bit off. Regardless, area equals length times width. So what we're going to do is multiply first the length and the width of the whole numbers. So I'm going to take 4 times 3. And we should know that 4 times 3 equals, wow, you guys are amazing. That's right, it does equal 12. And the next thing we're going to do is take 4 and multiply him by 1/2. To think of another way, we're going to take a half and do him 4 times. So 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 halves, which we can reduce to 2 wholes. That's the longer way. Some of you might be like face palming and saying, why didn't you just do 4 times a half? Which basically is interchangeable with half of 4, which is 2. You could do that too. I don't know why I went this route first. So basically what you have is you have 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times a half is 2. We need to combine these two because that would be 3.5. So if you put these two together, you'll get your area for number one. I wanted to look at the trapezoid because this is going to be hard, especially if you don't have the internet accessible or notes from our section on shapes, which I think was from the first volume, not even from this volume. I could be wrong though. So a trapezoid, if this helps you out, listen closely. Take a look at how many sides it has. When they're asking for attributes, they're just basically asking for things that you know to be true about the trapezoid that makes it a trapezoid. And first we can look at number of sides. Number two, what do we call a 4-sided shape? It starts with a quad and it ends with a relateral. That is how you spell that, I think. So that could be an attribute that I just gave you right away. And I'm going to leave the last attribute to you. We basically talked about the number of sides and what we call a 4-sided shape. Think about the angles, or think about, are there any sides that are perpendicular? That means like ones that run straight into each other. Are there any sides that are parallel? That would be sides that never run into each other, even if they went on for infinity. Those could all be options for attributes of a trapezoid. If all that fails and you don't understand a word I'm saying, you can Google attributes of a trapezoid and see what you find. Lastly, are there any others I want to... Yeah, I'll give you a really quick hint. If you want to find fraction versions of whole numbers, if they're giving you the denominator already, which they are, take this whole number and multiply him by the denominator. So that'll basically give you 3 groups of 6, and that will give you the numerator. So 3 times 6 equals blank, and that will tell you what your improper fraction should be. Okay, that was a quick one for the lesson. Hopefully the math boxes, that was a nice little refresher. Always fun to have some spiral review. LOL, JK, TTYL.